Hi guys, welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha. I'm a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So, happy Halloween. We're going to do a little spooky ooky chart analysis today. We are going to analyze what makes one of the charts of our most famous psychics and prophets and someone who was a really amazing healer. And he would go into these sort of trance states, right? So he was called the Sleeping Prophet. We're, of course, talking about Edgar Cayce. And he's one of the most notorious, famous psychics and channelers and healers of our lifetime. And he actually started his career as a sort of traditional healer, and then he would start getting these like psychic intuitive insights in these sleep states, and he would just start channeling things and tell people how to heal things. He would see things about previous lifetimes, and he actually said once in a trance state that Western astrology was one sign off in its calculation. So Edgar Cayce actually knew that Vedic astrology was more accurate as well too. So I think he would have appreciated this chart analysis. So let's pull up Edgar Cayce's Vedic sidereal astrology chart to see how we can see it all. He has one of the most intuitive, psychic, prophetic, spiritual, mystical, but also fame inducing charts as well too. So let's get into Edgar Cayce's Vedic astrology chart and really analyze what makes the chart of a mystic, what makes the chart of a prophet, what makes the chart of a healer. And not only those things, but what will bring fame in those fields. Let's talk about it today. I'm going to pull up the chart and we're going to dive deep. All right, so here we have Edgar Cayce's Vedic sidereal astrology chart pulled up. Okay, so let's get started, y'all. Okay, so first of all, let's start with his ascendant right here, first house. Okay. First house of Cancer means that his whole chart gets disposited by the moon, all right? So Cancer is ruled by the moon, right? First house lord goes into the 10th house. So let's hop over to his 10th house of Aries, okay? First house in the 10th house will already indicate that someone's whole life is going to revolve around their career, around the public, around notoriety, around fame, and around recognition, especially because we have the moon sitting there, okay? Moon in the 10th is a classic fame aspect in Vedic astrology because moon is the public, moon is the masses, okay? So first house lord in the 10th house with moon in Bharani Nakshatra sitting in that 10th house. We can already see that this is a chart that is going to produce some sort of notoriety or being well known for something in this lifetime. My Vedic astrology teacher would always tell us that if they have moon in the 10th house, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be famous in the traditional way. They're just going to be well known for their work in some way. So if they're a plumber, they're the best plumber in the town, right? If they are a waitress, they're really good and well known as a waitress, okay? But in this chart, we're going to get into why we can see that he was well known as a healer and a mystic and a psychic. All right, and this is going to be a little lesson as well on dispositors, okay? So let's follow the dispositors. First house lord into the 10th house, okay? Moon in Bharani sitting in the 10th house. We can already intuit that this is the chart of someone who is very career focused in this lifetime. They're going to have that bigger career. They're going to have a focus on the masses. They're going to have a focus on the public, okay? That is first house lord in the 10th house. That is moon sitting in the 10th house. And Bharani Nakshatra is a nakshatra in Vedic astrology that connects to breaking through and breaking free of something as well, okay? So moon in the 10th house, what was he doing? What was Edgar Cayce doing in his lifetime? He was breaking free and breaking through a lot of conventional societal norms, right? He wasn't a traditional healer. He wasn't a traditional doctor. He was going into these really strange, kind of unknown places, which is obviously this 8th house heavy chart, which if you know anything about astrology, you probably already looked at that and were like, whoa, what is going on with that 8th house? But we'll get into it. So Bharani moon in the 10th house, his career was all about breaking free, breaking through things, and healing things as well too. So Bharani will show someone is kind of the first to do something. All right, there's something about his career that is breaking free, breaking through things, and also kind of, being very revolutionary in some aspect as well too. That is moon in the 10th house. That is moon in Bharani Nakshatra. Okay. Breaking through ideas of what a healer looks like is one manifestation. Another manifestation is breaking through and being the first to sort of do healing in the way that he did it. Like, there was no sleeping prophet before Edgar Cayce, right? He was really unique and the first to do what he was doing. So that's that first house lord in the 10th house. Moon in the 10th house, he's giving something to the masses. He's giving something to the public. First house lord in the 10th house, moon in Bharani, and it's something that's unconventional. It's something that is the first of its kind, right? That's moon in Bharani. Okay. All right. So let us hop over. Oh, and okay, of course, this is so important. This is so important. I can't believe I almost forgot this. So he has Neptune sitting there in conjunction with the moon. All right. In his 10th house, guys. I just got full body chills because I actually wasn't even planning to talk about this, but I just saw this. Okay. Moon in the 10th house conjuncting Neptune. Neptune is the psychic. Neptune is the dream world. Neptune is things that are elusive or illusionary. It's in conjunction with the moon. Moon is also psychic. Moon is also the subconscious. Neptune with moon in the 10th house. His whole career was about going into subconscious states and pulling out psychic information. It doesn't really get more spot on than that. Like, it really doesn't, okay? It's not the tightest conjunction, but it's still about an 8-degree orb of conjunction, so you're still going to feel the energy no matter what, because in Vedic astrology, we just see conjunctions as like two planetary energies interacting in one house, right? We're not paying attention to a certain orb degree of conjunction. So in Western astrology, they would say, oh, it has to be a 10-degree orb. In Vedic astrology, we just see it as a conjunction if it's sitting in the same sign, okay? But the tighter the orb degree, the more the conjunction and the planetary energy is being felt. So 8 degrees isn't the tightest conjunction, but we're still going to feel that energy, and it's not, too far of an orb either, okay? So Neptune moon is known as a psychic placement, classic psychic placement, because Neptune is the spiritual, the intuitive. Neptune is also the dream world, okay? The moon is the subconscious, the moon is the intuitive. Neptune conjuncting moon in the 10th house, first house lord in the 10th house. His whole career, guys, his whole career was about going into dream subconscious states and bringing out and pulling out psychic information. Like, if that's not moon Neptune conjunction in the 10th house, I don't know what to tell y'all. It's right there. It's so obvious. It's so clear, which is why I just love Vedic astrology. It's such a flawless, beautiful system of astrology. Okay, so we see that Neptune moon in the 10th house, a psychic, a medium, a channeler, someone who goes into sleep or dream states and brings out subconscious information. That is Neptune, that is moon in the 10th house, first house lord in the 10th house. This is what his whole life and his whole chart is about. All right, okay, so we have moon, Neptune in the 10th house, and let's hop over now to his sun. So sun is in Pisces in the 9th house. Okay, his Bhrigu Bindu point is also in that 9th house. Sun is going to be whatever someone is really drawn to and interested in this lifetime. And sun is in the 9th house. The 9th house is higher learning, and the 9th house is philosophy. The 9th house is travel. 9th house is that very sort of religious, spiritual seeking house, right? So he probably had some sort of connection as well to like travels and spirituality, and he loved reading and he loved learning about different cultures and different places with that sun in the 9th house as well too. And 9th house is a very sort of spiritual, metaphysical house as well. It's kind of seen as more like traditional religion in Vedic astrology, but you'll find that when people have a heavy 9th house, they get interested in all sorts of religions, all sorts of philosophies, all sorts of ideologies all over the world as well too. Okay, so we see that Bhrigu Bindu, we see that sun. Sun in Pisces is already a very, sensitive, intuitive sign as well too. So we see that energy of more of that philosophical energy, more of that seeking energy, more of that energy of wanting to figure out like what's beyond this world, what else is going on. That's sun in Pisces in the 9th house. All right, now this is where I was honestly shocked when I saw this chart, because Lord knows this is a crazy 8th house. So, okay. Sun in the ninth house, he's always interested in the ninth house themes, travel, spirituality, religion, different cultures, all of those sort of themes, okay? Let's hop over to the eighth house. All right, we see Venus, we see Saturn, we see Mercury, we see Rahu, all in the eighth house of Aquarius. What is sitting there? We have Saturn in Aquarius in its own placement. Saturn does really well in Aquarius. Saturn likes to be in Aquarius, okay? So when Saturn is in its own sign in a house, it strengthens that house for whatever it's good for. The good and the bad, best believe it, okay? So Saturn in the eighth house will strengthen this chart, and also it's hemmed in by benefics. All right, that's really important to note. If we just had Saturn in Aquarius in the eighth house with no benefics around, yes, we have Rahu, but I kind of see Rahu as like a mild malefic, is kind of the consensus I've come to, because I don't feel like Rahu burns houses out in the way that Ketu does. When Ketu sits with things, it will create a lot of this like void energy. Rahu will just expand that energy, okay? So we see Saturn, but it's hemmed in by benefics. So we see Mercury is next to it, and then Venus is next to it. So yes, we have Saturn. Yes, we have Rahu in the eighth house. Saturn in its own sign. It's kind of this like, astrology is always a weighing out where it's like, okay, yeah, we have Saturn, we have one malefic, yeah, we have Rahu, a mild malefic, but then we have Mercury, and then we have Venus, two benefics, and then we also have Saturn in its own sign. So I would say this is a strong eighth house because of those different weighing out factors, all right? Saturn in its own sign in the eighth house. What was his whole career about, guys? The subconscious, the spiritual, the psychic, the intuitive, and going into subconscious states as well too. That is the eighth house if I've ever seen it. Saturn in the eighth and Venus there. Mercury, Rahu. Rahu in the eighth house shows that someone is going to feel obsessive towards the eighth house, right? Rahu will create this like burning desire wherever it goes. So Rahu in the eighth means that he was here to, kind of get obsessed with the eighth house things, the psychological, the spiritual, the psychic, the intuitive, what's going on beyond this world, right? That's the eighth house. Saturn in its own sign. So it means that it's like the eighth house lord is in the eighth house, right? It means that that eighth house is bringing eighth house energy into the eighth house. So it means that the eighth house is strong, 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 strong. Hemmed in by benefics. Saturn is right here. What is in front of it? Venus. What is next to it? Mercury. Two benefics. Okay. Then Rahu. But we're seeing Rahu as like a mild malefic. Okay. And all these planets are in very, very tight conjunction to each other. Venus is 23 degrees. Saturn is 20 degrees. Mercury is 19 degrees. Rahu is 18 degrees. These are very tight conjunction degrees in the eighth house. So all these planets are like closely interacting in this eighth house. I would be curious to know, I actually don't know this, but did he write a lot of books on metaphysics and the spiritual? Because when we have Mercury that close with Rahu in the eighth house of Shadabhishak Nakshatra, he must have written about like healing and written stuff about what he saw in his psychic vision. So if someone knows about that, let me know down below. I would be shocked if he didn't do a lot of the written words and wrote about what he was channeling as well too, because of that Rahu Mercury in Shadabhishak in the eighth house, Saturn in its own sign. He was definitely meant to be a writer as well too. All right, so not only do we have Neptune moon in the 10th house, which already shows an intuitive psychic career, then we have Saturn, which keys the career in the 8th house of metaphysics. Then we have Saturn in its own sign in the 8th house, strengthening the 8th house. Then we have two benefics next to Saturn in its own sign, Mercury, Venus. Also shows that he loved to learn and teach about spirituality and metaphysics, because Mercury and Venus will also show great teaching ability, two benefics in the 8th house as well too. So I wonder if he had like any students, or if he taught people about what he saw. He was kind of like a teacher as well too. Okay. All right, so that's that really heavy 8th house, Rahu in the 8th, obsessive about it. And also Shadabhishak is a nakshatra in Vedic astrology. That means the hands of 100 healers. So when we see planets go into Shadabhishak, I get a lot of clients with this nakshatra who are nurses, who are healers, who are energy healers. Shadabhishak connects to healing in some regard as well too. Okay, so it means that he was a healer, and obviously he started as a more traditional healer and then went down this really like 8th house Neptune moon path in his career, but essentially he was a healer through and through, traditionally and non-traditionally. Okay. Now let's hop over to his sixth house, because what else indicates a healer than the sixth house? We have Jupiter in its own sign in the sixth house with Mars. So we have one malefic, one benefic in the sixth house, right? But Jupiter is in its own sign, so I would say that Jupiter energy kind of outweighs the malefic, but we're still going to feel Mars, right? So Jupiter in the sixth means that someone is really interested in helping and healing, right? Because it expands and brings benefic energy to the sixth house of healing. And Jupiter with Mars, it's not a super tight conjunction, but it does mean whenever Mars kind of comes together with Jupiter, someone is going to be even more interested in that like energy, right? Jupiter, Mars in the sixth, Sagittarius, Jupiter in its own sign. Really strong sixth house because Jupiter is in its own sign, okay? So what do we have? We have a really strong sixth house because Jupiter is in its own sign. Really strong eighth house. Saturn is in its own sign. Guys, if we're looking for like healers and psychics, we'd be looking to things like Moon, Neptune, and then we'd be looking to the eighth house of healing and psychic ability, and then we'd also be looking to the sixth house. So we see it all, right? We can see it all there. And interestingly enough, Jupiter in the sixth can also show, Jupiter is kind of like getting better, bringing benefic energy, and sixth house is healing others. So there's a sense of like he has a lot of good luck, good fortune around healing with that Jupiter in its own sign in the sixth. Okay, Jupiter is also in the Mula Nakshatra. Mula means to get to the roots, to kind of like dig into something and get to the root of something, find the truth about something. So Sun in the ninth, Jupiter in the sixth of Sagittarius in its own sign. He was all about getting to the root and the truth of things, metaphysically, of course. So we can see that strength of the sixth house, strength of the eighth house, two houses of healers, traditional and non-traditional. Psychological healers is also the eighth house, therapists, psychologists. Sixth house can be things like doctors, traditional healers. Shadabishak is a nakshatra that connects to healing with the hands as well too. So he started his career as a more traditional doctor and healer, and then went this whole other path because he just kind of got forced into it. I believe I read as well too that he got his psychic abilities after a near-death experience. That's the eighth house. You're going to find if people have near-death experiences, they usually have something active in the eighth house, or they have the Gandanta point, which is a point of a spiritual knot in Vedic astrology. So we see all this energy in the eighth house, which can show near-death experiences that lead to psychic ability as well too. I've seen it in many charts before. All right, so that is pretty much this whole chart's energy, right? It's all right there, but let's move over to his D9 Navamsha chart, because I don't usually bring the D9 charts as much into these readings because I like to kind of keep it simple, but I just find it so interesting that he has the moon in the 10th house in the D9, right? So we see moon with K2, already a psychic placement. Moon K2 is very psychic, intuitive energy, and that's in his 10th house of career in the D9 Navamsha. So moon in the 10th in the D1, moon in the 10th in the D9. This chart is meant for notoriety and success in whatever field is chosen, right? But then because we see the other planetary energy near it, K2 is the psychic, the intuitive with the moon, psychic insights in the career and being well recognized for it. Moon Neptune in the 10th house in the D1, psychic intuitive insights and being well known for it, okay? And as well too, this is interesting, I just realized this, his 10th house lord is in the 6th house. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Jupiter aspects his 10th house. Okay, so that's one of Jupiter's special aspects. Jupiter aspects houses 5 and 9 over, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Jupiter is aspecting the moon. Really great aspect on the 10th house. I love Jupiter moon aspects. One of my favorite. It's something that I would love to have in my chart because Jupiter moon will show someone is very optimistic, they're very positive, They're very protected spiritually, and also they have such an expansive mind for spirituality and philosophy, and it's a very protected, good aspect, especially on the 10th house from the 6th house. Okay, so Jupiter aspecting the moon in the 10th house lord in the 6th. This is just, I mean, it's just spot on, guys. It's spot on. This is the chart of a healer who goes into the metaphysics and goes into the spiritual. Okay, 10th house lord in the 6th house will show healing in the career, right? Because 10th house is the career. We see moon in the 10th, the public, the masses, the fame, hops over into the 6th house with Jupiter sitting there in its own sign. That's a beautiful aspect for a healing career. Okay, Jupiter in its own sign in the 6th, 10th house lord in the 6th house as well too. Gives me chills because it's just so spot on. So spot on. Yeah, so 10th house lord in the 6th house can also show healing career, a career that has to do with helping other people, because that's the 6th house of helping and service and healing. So it's all there. We sometimes see charts. This is what's always so interesting to me about Vedic astrology, is sometimes we see charts that can go many different directions, okay? And then we see charts like Edgar Cayce's chart that is just, it's one thing and it's one way. And that's just how it is. And when you see it like that, they always really fulfill this like one big purpose. So it's really interesting to see those various things in different charts as well too. So yeah, this is the chart of a healer and a psychic and a spiritual healer through and through, baby. I thought it would be interesting to pull up the D10 real quick. Let's just see what's going on in his D10 chart. 10th house lord in the 2nd house, Venus in the 2nd. That's interesting. Whenever we see the 10th house lord in the 2nd house, it will show someone who uses like their voice or their speech in some way in their career. So we can see that, he was obviously like speaking and channeling a lot in his career, and he was going into these kind of trance states as well and using his voice. 10th house lord in the 2nd. 2nd house also rules education, so I don't know this. Someone can fact check and let me know, but I do feel like based on his chart, he was probably also a teacher of some sort as well too. And then we always look to what's going on with things that are karakas or indicators of career. So for example, Saturn, for example, Sun. And we see Sun in the 6th, healing, okay? And then we see Saturn in the 1st, a career around the self. So we see more clues and more indications of the career through the D10 as well too. All right, so this was a fun little Halloween analysis into one of our most famous prophetic psychics that was around, and such an interesting person, right? He has such an interesting story of kind of being this like traditional healer that goes this really different route and path and starts being a sleeping prophet who's channeling things in a trance state. That's Moon conjunct Neptune. That's Moon conjunct Neptune in the 10th house. That's Moon conjunct K2 in the D9 Navamsha. Clear as day, baby, as always with Vedic astrology. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this and learned from it as well too. And I hope you guys have such a beautiful, blessed Halloween. Stay safe, and I will talk to you guys soon, and I'm sending all the love.